Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. Well, let's have a look at the world's most expensive headphones, the Sennheiser HE1 review from Joshua Velour. Let's just have a look. Oh yeah. That's gotta be nice, pretty nice. I think I've tried those tubes. Those are really good. I think those are Telefunken tubes.
Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh and this is the HE1. Now before we get into this, I have a couple thanks to give. One is to Sennheiser for setting this up with an audio store that is kind of local in the Seattle area called Definitive Audio. Now this is a very, very nice store. It's actually one of the best that I've been able to find in Washington. They're located in Bellevue. The staff is amazing and they've been providing hi-fi equipment since about 1975. So if you're in the Seattle area, I would definitely recommend checking them out. I also want to thank Daniela, Tom, and Zach specifically for helping me get this review all set up. And they've all been incredibly generous in offering me this time and this space to film in. And thank you guys. Now, as far as why this particular review is able to happen is because there's a notable shortage of reviews on YouTube of this headphone. All of them are really brief or they're just impressions at a show or something like that. And so I wanted to do a thorough review. Now, personally, I like seeing this stuff a lot. I wish more companies in more fields would do this. This is one of the downsides to like Formula One. I miss the days when race cars were like really not held down by restrictions and it was like, do whatever you want, just make the fastest or the best possible thing. And that's kind of what they did here. And I'm a huge fan of this type of product. I think it's a really, really cool thing. So one of the things here is that this is a headphone system. It comes with the DAC, it comes with the amplifier. So the case that holds the headphones that kind of pops up in this incredible otherworldly rising effect where the tubes are heating up and allowing you to kind of visually admire what's going on with the introduction of these headphones every time you turn it on. This case is made of Carrara marble, brass knobs, and anodized metals. Now, you can find a lot of this information online if you just go to their webpage for it, but a couple things that they won't tell you is that you can actually get this Carrara marble in different colors or a color choice of your own. You can also anodize the brass to be any color you want. So it doesn't have to be silver. If you wanted to do bright pink or dark blue, you could. And so in a lot of ways, this actually kind of reminds me a lot of the high-end car market from how you purchase this headphone, which we'll talk about in a future video, and kind of how the customization options happen. This is certainly one of those things where you can work with the dealer and work with Sennheiser on getting a unit that is really specific to you. Okay, now a couple other little small facts and tidbits about the HE1 here. Inside this headphone, you have 2.4 micrometer thick platinum vaporized diaphragms. You also have gold vaporized ceramic transducers, and the protective casing around the tubes is actually not glass, it's actually quartz. And this is of course to reduce incoming vibrations. Now, one interesting thing here, while I was listening to it, a lot of tube amps that I've heard are very susceptible to microphonics. And I was actually tapping on the quartz on the side just to see if anything got through. Just kind of light tap, and I couldn't hear anything. And I definitely didn't get any weird tube buzzing or anything like that. And for the price, you would not expect that. Now, the DAC and amplification system in here is a little bit strange and definitely unorthodox. So this actually has a total of 8 DACs inside of it. And there's 4 per each channel, 2 channels, obviously. Now, as far as why they have 4 DACs per channel on this, I'm not quite sure. I would suspect that it has something to do with cross-referencing the signal. So you're deleting or not playing anything that's unique to one signal. So you have like a kind of a point of reference times 4 of what the signal is supposed to look like, and they only put through the most refined version of that signal. That would just be a random guess. There's probably a reason for it though. Now, the ear cups for this are machined out of a single block of aluminum. And the funny thing about this headphone, the reasons why it's so unorthodox, is because the amplifier is actually inside the ear cups, and they just send the power and the DAC signal through the cable, and the amp is inside the ear cups. Now, this is a Class A MOSFET amplifier, and the reason why it's built into the headphones, according to Sennheiser, is to overcome capacitive reactance of the cable. I'm not sure what all that means, but That's why they do it. Okay, and then last fun fact, this headphone actually made an appearance in the movie Parasite, which is a very good movie. I actually spotted it by myself when I was watching the movie, had no idea it was in there. So go watch the movie, see if you can spot it.
That is cool.
So let's get to the actual review portion of this. A lot to talk about here. We'll talk about the build first. So the build is very nice. There's a pretty liberal use of metal. They are weighty, but they're not overly heavy, and they're actually quite large. You know, in comparison to a lot of other headphones, these are going to be bigger, wider in general compared to a lot of headphones on the market today. A couple standout features of this: the comfort is exquisite. The headband is super plush and extremely nice. The pads are very soft, and they say they use exquisite or nice materials on the website, and they're not lying. This thing is very, very well made, and the comfort is one of the top priorities for Sennheiser for the listener, and they definitely achieved that goal. There is a wide flexibility of head size that you can have with this, so this will fit very small heads and very big heads. So you got basically everybody covered. Now on the inside of those ear holes, they are very tall and fairly deep, but they're not super wide back and forth, so you may get a little bit of pressure on the back. The one and only complaint I have about the build for this headphone is the pads do get a little bit hot. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the amplification built into this, or if that is just because of the pad material. I'm also in a lit room with studio lights and everything like that, so it could be a small part of it. The DAC interface build is very nice. You know, you got the marble, the use of the brass knobs, everything seems to be top notch, top quality. It's got the automatic rising stuff, so in terms of visuals, in terms of the material feel and the material choices, all top notch, as again, you would expect. Okay, so the sound signature. This is a beautiful sounding headphone. And I say the word beautiful over any other word, I think. I'm not gonna say technical headphone. I'm not gonna say a clinical headphone. I'm not gonna say X, Y, or Z. It is a beautiful sounding headphone.
I totally agree, and I think it has to do with that gold plating thing, because it does a lot to make the sound settle and seem very beautiful. So you actually want a very revealing and very aggressive source together with this. I noticed that when I tried it. If you just use a normal source, it just sounds very limited, and it can actually get a bit too simple and modest and overly warm. So yeah.
Just sounds pretty. And it's really all throughout the range that this sounds pretty exquisite with, but we'll start with the treble response. The treble response, in my opinion, stands alone. The attack speed is immeasurable by my brain. It's just like sound is off and then it's on and it's just go. Now,
yeah, that has a lot to do with the basic cable. If you don't have a proper cable on it, it doesn't really, solidify the sound, so you get the full thump of the sound and the full release. So it has a lot to do with that.
The tonality here is so good because of its defined boundaries. So it's not an overly saturated sound nor an undersaturated sound. It sounds very realistic in terms of, again, that detail retrieval, the tonality, the forwardness of the treble response. It seems quite more based in terms of trying to sound like real life than something that is trying to be a hyper technical or hyper detailed sounding headphone.
I agree.
It doesn't sound like that at all, actually. It's quite based in sounding real. Now, detail specifically is obviously present. There's obviously a lot of detail with this, but it's not at all forced. When I was coming into this, I was kind of predicting that this was going to be just some detailed monstrosity where it was just going to be just crazy forced analytics into your brain, and it's not that. It's
the Abyss 1266 is a lot like that, the way that he describes it. But when you put a proper cable on it, it becomes a lot more organic. But yeah, I also feel quite the same.
A very pleasing sound signature. It is detailed. To say it was not detailed would be a lie, but it's not some overly forced sound. The HE1's treble forwardness is very strange. In some ways, it's like perfectly featureless in like the best way. And it kind of just shrugs and does whatever the music is asking it to do. If you want an overly clinical, more sterile sound that you're putting through it, like a really crispy song, it's going to do that. Or if you want something warm and lush, it's going to do that. And the timbre characteristics ebb and flow, the detail forwardness ebbs and flows, the frequency forwardness is, really just whatever the particular song is asking for. It's almost in some ways like the detail features are sort of hard to kind of get a finite, kind of feeling for. And that's
And I just want to say that that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video. That has a lot to do when you're using a normal power cable on it, normal signal cables, normal source. The experience that he got from using this product is a very, I would say, half full impression of what it does. As soon as you connect a really, really good source to it, like an Audio Note CD4, and then upwards, it just opens up a lot more and becomes a lot less linear, and it just gives you a lot more taste, a lot more style. And I really get the impression that he just hasn't done this. Knowing his channel and how he tests gear, he usually only uses something like a Denafrips source, or some kind of a Cyrus CD player, or lower class Yamaha player, something like that, and just can't test proper gear like this and get a proper impression of what it does.
a very big compliment. I don't want that to sound like a detriment. That's really, really exceptional performance for that on the HE1. Now, mid-range response is where the tonality takes another step up, and it really, really grips you. This is still in that vein of trying to achieve a more lifelike sound, natural saturation to sound, not overly emphasized or underemphasized in any particular way. It's just very clear, concise, realistic. That being said, I find that the mid-range here is a thoroughly honest reproduction. So if you are putting something that was recorded too hot, or somebody is singing in a way that is not quite hitting the right notes, you're gonna know. And this is going to pour all that sound through this headphone into your brain, and it's gonna be pretty unrelenting in that task. The flip side of this is that when the singer is doing their job correctly, and when they're hitting the right notes, this is, simply put, the best vocal experience I have ever had on a headphone.
I just want to say that he is right, but the experience that he's getting, where it kind of turns on and off, where it goes from being very honest to suddenly being like super good, that hole there that separates those two realities, that is often just bad pairing, that you don't have a really good, proper, high quality source to fit the high quality gear. And yeah, you know, like I always say, cables, dedicated circuit breaker for the equipment and all of that, you need that in this situation. You cannot skip on those things and just expect like, oh, it's got all this filtering, it's got an amplifier, it's another filtering here and there. No, you need that. When you have gear like this, you need OI8 037 plugs, and you know, not necessarily those expensive cables that are in the market. You can just make your own cables, but you need that in order for the taste and the style to fully penetrate.
It is exquisite. It's exceptional. Very good. Good doesn't even describe it. It is maddeningly awesome. One of the songs that I really liked, and we'll talk about songs and music in a second, is Mad World from Pentatonics, their cover of that song. Whew. It's nice. So bass response is something that I was concerned about because it's an electrostatic headphone. They're notoriously kind of picky and not the easiest to deal with. But the bass response here is simply shocking. It is as quick and as finitely placed and as fast and as clean as anything on the market, but it also hits quite hard, and it's quite a bit deeper than, well, every other electrostatic that I've heard, but it has that cleanliness,
Yeah.
that clarity to back the quantity of it up. Now, what this headphone won't do is introduce sloppiness to the bass response to keep up with quantity demand. So if you're pushing through like a really, really bassy track, what this headphone is going to do is prioritize the cleanliness of that sound over the quantity. So you're never going to get this oversaturated, boxy sound out of the bass, even if that's what the music is trying to force out.
I don't fully agree, because once you get those power cables working up, you get a lot more fullness in the bass. And so what he's saying again is that, you know, that effect that you get from using regular $1 power cables and RCA cables and just not having a proper source, the glue, the substance, you know, the full body experience, you don't get that. And especially in general, when we're dealing with Sennheiser, their sound is generally pretty linear, and this is one of the products that just goes in a almost opposite direction. But if you listen to a very good high-end product in bad conditions like he's doing, it's just not going to do it. You know, it's going to act the way that he says, and not the way that the music intentionally was created. So I just want to say I don't fully agree with that being the full truth
Out of the headphones. So the bass response is one of the only areas where I felt like the headphone itself was limiting what the music is asking it to do.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular way, I think it's limiting it in a good way, because the quantity is still quite pleasing and more than enough, and you know, it'll all the way down to 20 hertz. I think the frequency response actually goes down to 8 hertz, and I would actually believe
That's
this with this
crazy.
electrostat. But it's not going to play something super sloppy. It's going to be as clean as really anything would be able to display bass response. Now, in terms of quantity, it's not like a super bass heavy headphone at all. It's kind of got a very natural Sennheiser-y type of bass with a little bit of guts and a little bit of flavoring behind it. It's quite enjoyable,
A lot of
and
flavor,
it definitely feels substantial when it needs to feel substantial. Like if you're listening to a really bassy track, you'll know it. But there are bassier headphones out there, but I think
the thing that he's talking about is the thing that I've experienced so many times, and I'm just going to say it again. You get this linear type of nice sound when you're just not using it properly. Everything that he's describing is fully correct in his reality, in those conditions that he's created. He just doesn't realize that it has so much more to offer. I've listened to this headphone under 3 totally different setups. I listened to it at a show, with the setup that he describes. You know, basic cable, TNA, CD player, crap cables, noise around, not fully broken in. I mean, and yeah, he's fully right about everything that he says, but this is where, at this level, you're getting into a type of reality where you can just almost do whatever you want with the sound. You can make it really muddy and heavy, and you can actually make it a lot more intense and in your face if you wanted to. I'm just saying that that's a reality that you can create at this level. So in a way, he's right, and in a way that I'm actually also right.
Cleanliness and clarity of the bass response is as good on this headphone as any other. Okay, so for imaging and soundstage, this is where things get sort of complicated, and I want to be very descriptive about how I explain this.
Yeah.
So the imaging is absolutely refined.
Yes.
Like, you're not going to find sharper, more pinpoint accurate imaging,
Agreed.
I don't think, anywhere. I think this is about as good as it gets, and there's no headroom after this, at least in terms of what I've heard. What's notably good about the imaging is the precision of placement for the entire frequency response. So bass response, normally on most headphones, is kind of sloppy in comparison to this. This doesn't have this loose bleeding of the edges of like a bass guitar or a drum, where you can tell that, you know, the mid-range and the treble are in a specific place, but then the bass is kind of ambient and sort of kind of loosely placed. This isn't like that at all. The placement of the bass is as refined as the mid-range and the treble response. So when you hear a guitar over here, you are hearing all of the guitar, the entire frequency over here. And when the track needs kind of a bassy, kind of all-encompassing, surrounding response, this can also play that. So the dexterity of the bass response, the dexterity of all of the frequency response is exquisite. And that's what really sets this headphone apart from basically everything else in terms of imaging. Now the sound staging, this is where this headphone starts to be obvious about what it's intended to do. This is a very headphone-based sound. This is all pretty much happening on the sides of your head and internally. The forward representation is kind of good, but it's actually not the best of all the headphones I've heard.
And this is where I have to disagree. He's about to say something with the HD 800s having a bigger soundstage, and they don't have a bigger soundstage. That's an illusion, because they just don't have enough substance. So it seems as if it's bigger. Once you have a proper source on it, and like I said, with the entire setup, and you've had this thing on for at least an hour, it just totally disappears, the headphone, and it does not become a headphone. It just becomes extremely holographic, extremely deep, and then it actually is bigger than the HD 800 and the HD 800S and the new one, of course, the 820. So I just want to disagree with that.
It's a very kind of in your head, very personal, very intimate listening experience. That's exactly what you get with this. Now, what you can kind of imagine is the vocal positioning of an HD 660S, but with much wider and more open soundstage, but even not as wide as another Sennheiser headphone, the HD 800S.
But also, more importantly, a lot deeper.
That's further out to the sides.
And a lot more intimate.
What this has over those, and over a lot of headphones, is scale and height and largeness to the sound, even though it's not super wide. So
yeah, I agree, but it's still a lot bigger than he thinks it is, but that has to do with his crappy source. I just want to say that the one that he mentioned, the 500 series and the 600 series, he didn't mention 600, but I just want to mention them. They usually are a hell of a lot more plasticky in sound, empty and characterless. So when he talks about detail, it isn't just information, it's just personality, intimacy, truly being there, and just like hitting, almost like reality hitting you. There's a lot of force coming from this headphone, but you have to know that when you don't set it up properly, it's just gonna be like nice, beautiful, interesting, linear, a bit held back, and not as impressive as a lot of cheaper headphones that only cost like a third or a fourth of this. But it's an illusion. You have to use extreme equipment with it, then it will open up, and then it will really almost eat you alive, even though it seems extremely beautiful and inviting and stuff like that. But yeah, I just want to kind of want to share that with you guys.
You get the personalization aspect, but then also the scale, but everything definitely seems very close-knit, very intimate, very personal. A track that's exceptional at showing the scale of this was 747 from the new Tenet soundtrack. That song on this headphone is bonkers. It is really good. Okay, so music. This is actually a big internal discussion for me of like, all right, I'm gonna go listen to arguably the best headphone on the planet. What do I listen to that is worthy of the headphone? So what I decided on was a series of songs that I felt like were a good mix of kind of more technical tests like bass, depth and soundstage width and detail retrieval and all that fun stuff, impulse response, all that fancy stuff. And then also things that I just personally really liked, because the odds of me getting another crack at this thing alone for this amount of time is not too high. So I wanted to take full advantage if I could. I will talk about the songs that I used in a separate video. I'll make a follow-up video to this one. I'll get more in depth in that. But the reason why I bring this up is because I also wanted to test all the different genres, everything from super refined songs like Diana Krall, to
Diana
more
Krall.
pop music, like
Always
even
sounds
through
good
some
on
Weekend
all.
on this, just to see how it handled more mainstream music. This had
Should never test Katie Malua, Diana Krall, and Hugh Masekela on really good gear that you intend to maybe buy, because it will always sound pretty good on all gear, unless it's really, really, really bad gear. Yeah, of course you want to listen to that, but not just, don't put your trust in that being completely honest, because there's a lot of forgiveness in that type of sound. So basically all gear can play that pretty well.
is top notch in every genre. So you can throw anything at this, and this is going to be able to display it in a really, really enjoyable way. It's going to be awesome for everything. Again, like you would expect, but again, not every headphone is good at everything. This headphone is great at everything. Okay, so my conclusion here. To call this headphone exquisite or amazing, or any regular term for awesome, would be an understatement, I think. This is an exceptional headphone. It is an exceedingly good headphone, and headphone system, really. And that's it. I've capped out my vocabulary for what I can call this headphone that would explain what it's capable of and how good it sounds. I think the most apt word, again, like I started this review with, is that this is a headphone that sounds beautiful. So I also want to try and refine, a sentence or two that gives you kind of the closest description of the sound quality, even though this is something that you'd want to listen to for yourself. This is like the best possible version of the HD 600 series sound signature. So everything that the 600 is good at, the 600 series, the 660S, all that, this is like that, but just way overdone. Like just this, the most refined version of that type of sound signature. So normally I would go kind of standout features and features that could be better or are bad. The standout feature is that there isn't any bad here. The tonality was one of the standout features, though. The clarity of the vocal response is one of the standout features. And then, of course, the entire presentation, the looks, the kind of halo around this headphone. If you're in the market for something like this, I think this is going to be perfectly satisfactory for what you're looking for. I want to thank Sennheiser again for help.
I just want to say that he said before that it doesn't fit all people's tastes. I can't remember if it's in this video or the following up video, but I just again want to disagree and say that this is a headphone. Once you set it up properly, you will listen to all kinds of music. I'm talking about behemoth metal music, Marilyn Manson, Diana Krall, Barbra Streisand, classical music, everything, hip hop, techno. This is truly a remarkable product, and I saw in the following up video that what he did was he listened to some songs via, what was it, I think Tidal or Spotify, and a lot of the music that he listened to was electronical music, and I just think, like, oh god, the new generation and their modern electronical fake sound music via Tidal. You can't judge a product without having listened to a lot of fine classical music with a lot of instruments. This setup is so good at reproducing classical music. You really owe it to yourself to listen to classical music when you listen to this. I'm not one of those type of people that wants to listen to opera or some boring classical music, some random boring classical music. But this thing here enabled me to do that. And all that I had connected to it when I tested it, it was, I think it was an ear acoustic CD player. Far from the best CD player that you can buy. Just a decent, good enough CD player. Far better than the ones that they usually use. But I mean, that sounded brilliant with this thing. It almost sounded like I had a CD4 CD player from Audionaut costing a hell of a lot more. and you know, thanks to this whole setup. So, and I was just wondering, you know, how would it sound if I had a isolate box or gigawatt or AudioQuest power box on it, and I had, you know, top AudioQuest cables on it, and like I don't know, Audio Note CD6. How the hell would it then sound? You know, I would probably be so almost traumatized from listening to music that I wouldn't be able to leave the area. But this is the headphone of them all. This is a fantastic setup. So if you ever have the chance to listen to this setup, you should really do that. This is a gorgeous setup, and I would say it's one of the closest experiences I've had to listening to a Audio Note level 3 sound system that's set up in a decent way. Not a very good way, but in a decent way. I would say that this setup here, when it's set up in a proper way, not the way that he's done it, but when it's set up in a proper way, then I would say that it could easily beat a Macintosh speaker system, Paslab speaker system, or Mark Levinson speaker system. And I'm talking about the best ones that they have. It could easily beat that. And that's one of the reasons why I just was, just really crazy about trying it. And I also had the reservations that he did, trying it under the regular circumstances that he did, and I can definitely tell you that he's not lying. He's a good reviewer, and he's spot on, but his reality belongs in that, you know, fake reality type of world where you're not doing things properly, because you can tell that he's used to testing gear at a much lower level, so he can't figure out how to test gear like the Sennheiser or the Abyss 1266 or the Audi's LCD 4 or Top Focal Utopia headphone. These are headphones that he doesn't test in a proper way and give you proper feedback, because he just doesn't have the gear to do that. So, but he's an honest guy. He's very transparent in everything he does. I'm just here to make a video about saying these things are good. All the things I just mentioned are good, but they're like 3 to 5 times better when you set them up in a proper way. And that's basically the message that I wanted to hammer through with this video, that there's a lot more to have of good sound. So don't think when you're trying these products that, oh, it's just like that, I'm not so crazy about this, and oh, it's a bit linear, and there's a bass jump here, and oh, it's for this type of person. All of these products that I just mentioned, all of these products are very good products, and all people in the world will love them once it's set up in a proper way. And these are products that cost a tenth of this whole setup here, you know, or even less. So I just wanted to hammer that message through to give people hope of this type of sound actually ending up in your hands, having a normal wage. It's doable. It's attainable. Everybody can have this type of sound, almost everybody. That's the message I wanted to get through, and I hope you guys like the video and will continue to support the channel. Have a nice day. Bye.